But first to breaking news tonight, the diplomatic high drama surrounding Julian Assange's asylum bid. The Ecuadorian government is now holding a press conference to announce its decision on Julian Assange's request for political asylum, as Mr Assange waits in the Ecuadorian embassy. Well, joining us now outside that embassy is our Europe correspondent, Phil Williams. And Phil, I think you can tell from the crowd behind you, we've just got news, and I presume they have too, that the Ecuadorian government is going to grant asylum to Mr Assange. What next?
Yes. Yes, well, these are the celebrations. This is the news that those supporters of Julian Assange who'd gathered here quite in substantial numbers now had hoped to hear. This whole area now is filled with media, with his supporters and with the police. Earlier there were arrests when they tried to clear them away from the front of the embassy. But yes, it does appear now that he will be granted the sanctuary that he'd hoped. But that's in another country, that's in Ecuador. He's here, and the question remains, it doesn't really matter theoretically what is done in Quito to actually get him there is virtually impossible, because the moment he steps outside of these embassy doors, he will be arrested. Now, the foreign minister was highly critical of the British government. He said they were hypocritical about their approach to the immunity of embassies, citing the invasion of the British embassy in Tehran in 2011, saying, well, they're prepared to do the same thing right here behind me to get Julian Assange out of here. So we still have an impasse. We have the result that perhaps was expected, because there's a great deal of antagonism now between these two governments. But in practical terms, Julian Assange remains behind me, and with no real way out to get to Ecuador. And so in effect, the impasse remains.
Yes, it's a serious problem between these two countries, because the Ecuadorian foreign minister made a series of points about Britain's hypocrisy. But not only that, he's also saying that they believe, the Ecuadorian government believes, that Assange is not safe. They believe his case, that he will be extradited to the United States, that furthermore he won't face a fair trial but a military trial, could face the death penalty. And on top of that, he's actually saying, he said precisely, that the Australian government is culpable here for not offering the proper support to Assange. This is obviously going to resonate through the arguments in Britain. Absolutely, and really what he's done is support absolutely the cases that were made by Julian Assange, by his legal team, that consistently that extradition to Sweden would then follow extradition to the US, where he could face a death penalty and be tried by a military court, not a civilian court. So basically the Ecuadorian government has supported that absolutely, totally, and along the way been extremely critical of the Australian government's support of Julian Assange. So really they have made no friends in the West at the moment, but that was almost inevitable, given the bad blood now between Britain and Ecuador, and therefore between Sweden and Ecuador, US and Ecuador, Australia and Ecuador. Yeah, Phil, it remains to be seen whether the British government were in fact sabre-rattling when they said they were prepared to send the police in, or they had the legal right to send the police in to arrest Assange, take him by force. Do you think that was sabre-rattling? Do you think this is going to escalate to a point where they feel they have to do that?
Well, I think it's highly unlikely that in this highly charged environment that the police would march in and grab him and drag him out and take him to Heathrow and put him on a plane. If that was the option that they chose, and it would be an extreme one, they would no doubt wait for a less public time, probably deep in the night in a couple of weeks' time. But really they're caught in a bit of a difficult position too, because they say they have to enforce the law. The law has said, and all the legal avenues have been exhausted by Julian Assange and his team, that he must be extradited to Sweden. And they say, or the spokesman for the Foreign Office here had said before, no matter what he's granted by Ecuador, the British law takes precedent and must be enforced. So at the moment, it is an impasse. He's stuck here. The British government does have the legislation to be able to go in
if it so wishes, but it's a very extreme move. It's meant for extreme circumstances, such as a terrorist attack on an embassy or a shooting from the embassy. That's what sparked it back in the 1980s with the shooting from the Libyan embassy of a police officer. So this would be seen as very over-the-top action by many people, and I've no doubt at all the British government would dearly love to avoid it.
Yeah, Phil, no one's got a crystal ball, obviously, and I know it's very difficult to speculate on how this might, in fact, pan out. But what are serious people steeped in the law saying in Britain? What is the debate there?
Well, the debate has always been over the fairness of the actual extradition in itself, but that debate is almost academic now because we've moved into a different phase. And seriously, nobody actually knows. I don't think the British government or Ecuadorian government really know exactly what's going to happen. Sure, there are options, but of course they will want to limit the damage, the international relationships that they have built over the years. The Ecuadorian-British relationship was very good up until this point. They do not want a sour relationship with a South American country. They've already got bad relationships with Argentina. They can't afford to have that bad feeling spreading much further. So the British government will no doubt be very, very reluctant to move in force and actually basically remove the immunity from this embassy here, and no doubt will seek to find some other diplomatic solution. The other possibility is that Julian Assange just stays and stays and stays until he can stand it no longer and comes out of his own accord. But of course that could be a very long time.
It could indeed, Phil, and we won't expect you to remain there the entire time, but undoubtedly we'll come back to you tomorrow. Thank you very much.